Good morning, Bellows Falls and Rockingham, and welcome to the feed. Here we are, Mike and Marty.
Good back.
It's good to be back. I was away for a week, had a vacation out to the West Coast. Amazing that you can go from the West Coast to the East Coast in 5 hours.
It is amazing.
Yes, it's just unbelievable. Anyway, that was a great fun. Today we have Michelle Bos-Lun, and she's going to be with us to talk about herself and her candidacy. She's running for the new reapportioned Windham 3, and and she's obviously going to explain all this to me because I need it. But first, Marty, with some local events.
So, classic movie tonight is Driving Miss Daisy, and it's sponsored by James Plumbing and Heating. I'm not sure what the regular movie is because I couldn't find it anywhere, so it's a mystery what the movie is. Elvis just finished last night, but anyway, the classic movie is Driving Miss Daisy. A couple weeks back, we had Sam Maskell in, and she was talking about the Biblio bike. So we wanted to actually show you a picture of the Biblio bike because we didn't have any pictures at that time. And Sam has been taking that bike a lot of places. It's been at the farmer's market. She was there this past Friday. They were handing out books. She's been out in Saxon's River. Just this morning, she was down at the Flatiron Cafe with Toby, who's a therapy dog. So I think it's a great thing. So look for the Biblio bike in your community, and kids can go and they can get books for free.
Yeah, great. So glad you got that.
And then if you are interested in the Windham County Senate race, the candidates are going to have a forum on Monday evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Fact TV will be broadcasting it, or you can go and show up in person, and it is at, I should have had that out in front of me.
Rockingham Library.
The Rockingham Library.
And it is only the Democratic candidates.
It's only the Democratic candidates. And I think you'll see some familiar faces. I've seen Nadar and I've seen Wendy around town. I've not seen Witchy, doesn't mean he wasn't in town, but I know they have been doing a lot of campaigning here in the area. Speaking of campaigning and speaking of running for things, so explain to everybody why it's District 3 and not District 4.
Okay, so...
First, we should introduce her.
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
This is Michelle Bos-Lun. She is running for State House Rep in the newly redistricted Windham District 3. And you're running... we had Leslie Goldman on a few weeks ago. She talked briefly about it, but I still think I still don't quite get it. So I think it's interesting. It's good to revisit how the redistricting came about and why and what it is now.
Okay, great. So I have been a U.S. history teacher for a long time for middle school and high school students. So I've explained versions of this in a classroom, but now I'm explaining it to a lot of voters because even though many of us have been voters for 20 or 30 years, you don't usually pay attention unless you have a switch in your district. So according to the Constitution, every 10 years we have a census. So when you have a census, the idea is that you're counting all of the people that live in all of the regions of the United States, and then you look at the numbers and you determine, do we have accurate representation and services for the population that we have? So in our case, here in Vermont and around the US, we did a census in 2020, and it took a while because it was COVID and it was difficult to reach people, and a lot of people moved in and a lot of people moved out. But when they came up with all the numbers after doing the census, what they found was in Windham County, we had actually lost 17% of our population in the previous 10 years. So they looked at the entire state, they looked at the numbers, they looked at our state, our region, and then basically the way they calculate who represents which district is they take the whole number of the census and they divide it up by the number of representatives. So there are 150 representatives in the House. I've served one term in the House for Windham 4, and at that time I think it was something like 4,108 people were supposed to be per representative. And now after redistricting, the number is higher. It's 4,200 something. And so in order to make the puzzle fit with the right number of people being represented by each representative, they had to change the borders because you're supposed to be, I think, within 2%, less than 2% of that 4,200 number, and we just weren't close. And so some of the districts where you had a two-person district were made into a one-person district. Oh, wow. And then some of them, they changed the borders. So we actually didn't lose any representatives, even though we lost population. But what they did is there were, in 3 different cases, people who had exclusively served Windham County now are also merged and representing parts of other counties. In my case, thankfully, I'm still only in Windham County, but my district is changing dramatically. So I serve for 1 term in Westminster, Dummerston, and Putney. But in the new district, Windham 3, it will only consist of 3 towns, and it's Westminster, where I live, Rockingham, and Brookline. And Windham 3 used to have 5 towns. Now it only has 3. So there's been a lot of changes. But the current district will have 2 representatives for those 3 towns. Sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded answer,
that's
but
really
I hope
good.
that's clear.
That was very clear. And it makes sense. And so, so what does that mean for you?
Well, what it means for me is that after serving for 1 term in the State House, I'm running for re-election sort of as an incumbent, but sort of not. I mean, I do have 2 years of experience, and 95% of the people in Westminster, I'm their same rep. With redistricting, actually, there was 5% that had already been in Windham 3, but for them, I'll actually be a new representative for that 5% that was added in. But basically, it means I'll have a new district mate. So there will be 2 people representing those 3 towns, and I think it's fair to say my hope is it will be Leslie Goldman, who is also a Democrat, and we were elected together, and we worked actually closely together. We submitted a bill together in the last biennium. But also it means that I'm going to be representing people in 2 towns that are different than I did before. Now, Rockingham is a very logical fit for me. I mean, I live in Bellows Falls. I don't live in Bellows Falls. My mailing address is Bellows Falls, but I live in Westminster about a mile from where we're filming this. So Bellows Falls is already my hub town, and this is where I go to the dentist, and this is where I do lots of things. So Rockingham, I feel, is a really easy fit. Brookline is a harder fit. I don't know as much about Brookline, and it's a long way to get there from here.
And okay, I'm going to show my and Mike's going to give me a hard time for this.
I'm not.
Where is Brookline?
Okay, so Brookline is on the other side of Putney Mountain.
Okay.
If you're driving from here, if you go up to Cambridgeport and take a left, you can then get onto the road that leads to Brookline, which a bulk of Brookline is called Grassy Brook Road.
Okay.
It's adjacent to Newfane.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you look at a map,
And Athens, too.
yeah.
right?
If you look at a map, there are parts of our district that are adjacent, but through the woods and through the mountain. And like on the road, you have to go through Athens, which is not part of our district.
So it's like you can't get there
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah, it's
Literally.
challenging. Yeah, which honestly, for the people of Brookline, what that means is they're going to have to get to know me, and I'm going to have to get to know them in a way that's a little different than Rockingham. You know what I mean? Rockingham, I can be here in 5 minutes.
Brookline,
It's 45 minutes, and like the last time, 2 times ago when I went to Brookline, I got stuck in the mud by the beaver pond and had to have AAA pull me out. So there are challenges, but I am
Vermont.
determined to meet
Yes.
and represent those people, and I do know people there. I've been knocking on doors. I know some people there through other channels. I used to work at Leland and Gray part time. And so, yeah, it's good. It's all fine. I mean, being a representative, you want to connect with and know what are the issues on the state level and how can they help the people at the local level. And I can do that with the new towns. It just means extra work for all of us, but we can do that.
It seems like, according to your website, you were doing, I think you're calling them community conversations. Were those in person or online?
Those, because I was elected during the COVID period, we've so far done them exclusively online. When I was serving with Mike Merwicki in Windham 4, which I actually still am, we're not in session, but my term actually in Windham 4 goes until December. We were meeting once a month. We were doing community conversations.
So that would make, I would assume that would be at least taking a little bit of a barrier for getting to know Brookline people, because they could connect with you via community conversations.
They could. They haven't so far. And actually, we've had a little bit of a hiatus because there were some other things happening right in the period right after the session closed. But actually, I've talked with Leslie Goldman is going to start doing some online forums for the new Windham 3, which I plan to attend initially as a resident because I won't be serving Windham 3 yet. But I will attend, and I will be available. And then we're also thinking to do some sessions at the library that we will offer in-person sessions. We've never done in-person sessions, because of when we were elected, but we know some of our colleagues in the legislature before COVID were doing like a once a month meeting in person at their local library. And we have talked to the library and they're open to that.
That's great.
So Leslie and I are hoping to be able to implement both of those things in the near future so that we can have another way to meet and connect with voters.
But you're also doing, which you were elected during COVID, so you probably didn't get to do this before, but now you're doing house-to-house visits, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That must be different too and interesting.
It's very different, and I must say I love it. On a certain level, it's amazing compared to calling someone on the phone or
Yeah,
sending them an
yeah.
email or sending them a postcard, and maybe they call you back or maybe they don't. You knock on the door and you get to have a conversation with someone. And I mean, I was saying just when I came into the studio today, one of the people that works in your studio, I met his mother when I was knocking on doors last week, and she was telling me that her mother was 103 and she used to be a school principal. And the longer we chatted, we realized she used to be a school principal at the school that my granddaughter goes to.
Wow.
So it's like you find these connections
Yeah.
when you can have a conversation that are very different from what you get from a postcard or a phone
Right,
call
right.
or even somebody looking at my website. And I like people. I mean, I wouldn't run for office if I didn't like people. And I like them better in person. So yes, I'm very
Yeah.
grateful to have the opportunity to knock on doors and do in-person events because that's how you get to have more extended conversations and,
Right,
and learn
right.
more.
So you must be getting impressions of the people.
Mm-hmm.
What would you, as a barometer, what would you say? Are people doing well? Are they concerned about certain things? I mean, how would you gauge that? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a couple ways to answer that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, overall, I think most people that I meet with are happy that things are opening up and in some ways life is returning more to normal than it's been in a long time. I think universally people are feeling appreciative for that. The concerns that I would say I'm hearing the most about, there would be two issues that I hear the most concerns about. One of them is housing, which is really, really dire in our county, including in every part of a district that I have served and that I will serve. It is just very difficult, especially to find rental housing. So there are a number of different reasons for that, and the legislature actually put a lot of money into building new types of housing availability, ranging from low-income housing to helping first-time home buyers, to renovating places to make more rentals available, but there still isn't enough, and it takes time. And I mean, I have family members that are looking for rentals because their landlord wants to move back into their house, and they've in 3 months they haven't been able to find an
Yeah.
open thing. They're probably going to move into a tiny house, so it's like there aren't good options for
Yeah.
people, and not everybody has the option to move into a tiny house, and not everybody wants to move into a tiny house. So housing would certainly be a very significant. I would say that would be across the board. That's the one that I hear the most. That it seems the most dire. The other one that I hear about, and this is from people in a variety of different roles, is challenges with workforce. And so if I'm talking to superintendents or school principals or people in the police department or the fire department or small business owners, they can't get enough people to fill the jobs that they need to do the work. And that is like every level in almost every business. You know, restaurants are having to cut back their hours because they can't find people to serve and cook. Teachers are having, when they call off sick, sometimes the principals were needing to fill in the classroom because they didn't have enough people to fill in. We have a shortage in pretty much every work area, but especially in some critical ones, it's really dire.
Nursing and the healthcare industry, I believe, is right up there in the dire.
Absolutely. And like the nursing shortage is really dramatic. And I mean, again, the legislature has done some work on that. We put forward some supports to try and encourage nurses who have been trained in Vermont to stay in Vermont. We do some loan forgiveness. If they've been educated here and they stay to work here, they can get their loans forgiven. And we're hoping that if they do that, that will then help them build deeper connections here in the state, and it'll build a stronger network of people who can work as nurses here in Vermont, because the traveling nurses are so expensive.
Oh, I know.
And they also are not as experienced in our area. We want
Right.
people to come here and serve and stay. And that's a huge challenge. So workforce and housing, those are the two that I hear the most consistently. I mean, everybody you knock on their door, they have a different pet issue, but those are the two that I hear the most consistently.
And those are two that, like you said in the beginning, are not going to be fixed overnight.
No.
I mean, it's going to take time. It takes time to build houses. It takes time, I think, to And they're kind of married because we can't necessarily get people to come
If they
here and
can't
take
find
the
a place
jobs
to
if they
live,
can't
they
find a
can't.
place to live.
Absolutely, and I've heard that in
Yeah.
Putney, where people have hired people to work at Landmark or at some of the schools in the area, and it's hard for them to find housing. They end up going to Keene or
Yeah.
somewhere over to New Hampshire because they can't find housing here, and then that's a loss. Then those people are going to be grocery shopping in Keene, and they're going to be
Exactly.
buying their shoes in Keene, and
Pretty
they
soon they're
can.
going to be working in Keene.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't want to pay the gas,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
gas money, the
Yeah.
commute. So
Yeah.
I think that y'all have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, we're working on it, but it's not a quick and easy fix. And even though there are some steps in place, we got a lot of money coming in from the federal government, and a lot of that went into housing, and some of that is going into education and child care workers and all kinds of things that will help workers. But it's not quick.
No.
You
Yeah,
know, it's
no,
not
no,
quick.
it's not.
There are no quick and easy answers, and I am not applying for an easy job. This
No,
is a
you're
hard
not.
job. It's a hard job, but you know, I think there are a lot of good people in the legislature, and I want to keep working at it. You know, there's good work that needs to happen, and the longer I'm in, the more I understand, and I'm looking forward to doing some more work for the people of Vermont if they want me.
So
Yeah.
what made you initially put your hat in the ring? What made you decide?
Well, honestly, I was not, you mentioned somebody that you had interviewed recently said, oh, they got involved in politics when they were in second grade. Well, that was not me. I actually was asked, I've heard somewhere that you have to be, women usually have to be asked 7 times to run for office before they agree.
Wow.
And that was not my case. But in my case, it was about 3 times, actually. And I gave a speech for March for Our Lives about gun reform, and particularly related to safety and problems with suicide by gun. And after I gave that speech, which was at March for Our Lives in Putney, I think it was in spring of 2017, I had 2 different people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, that was such a great speech. You should run for office. And I said, no. I said, thanks. I just kind of laughed. And I was like, thanks. I'm glad you liked the speech. But I said, I'm a teacher. I work in restorative justice. This isn't, I don't think politics is my path. And then I went a little bit longer, and it turned out Nader Hashim was serving in the seat that I am holding now, and I found out that he wasn't going to be running for re-election. And some people said, "Oh, you should consider running for that seat." And I was like, "Oh, not me, not me. Like, I have a job I like. I enjoy teaching. I'm doing restorative justice in Brattleboro." And then there was one other factor that really kind of pushed me over the edge, and that was actually one of my students. I work in the Governor's Institute every summer, and just before the summer before I decided to run for office, one of my students was very passionate about the environment, and she was talking to me over lunch at the Governor's Institute, and I said to her, and I thought it was a compliment, Una, I'm so happy to work with you because I have confidence that you and other young people like you are going to fix some of the problems that my generation have created. And she looked at me for a minute and she said, well, thanks, Michelle, but that's a lot to lay on us. Why don't you do something? And I thought for a minute, and I was like, absolutely fair. Like, you are 16. I can't let you stop at 16. You're not going to solve all the problems. That's not fair. And then I could hear her voice in my head. Why don't you do something? And I'm pretty active in the community, and I was before I ran for office. But about 2 weeks after I had that conversation, I realized that Westminster did not have a town Democratic committee. And when I asked why not, I was told that nobody wanted to serve on it. So it had dissolved 2 or 3 years before. And so I could hear my student's voice, why don't you do something? And I was like, well, I guess I need to do this. So by stepping up for that and being the chair for almost a year before I decided to run, I became more familiar with what needs to happen in the state. I got to know other legislators, and it's fair to say that I got encouragement from a lot of people who said, we think you can do this, you should do this. And so I decided I would toss my hat in the ring, and it wasn't my intention to run for office, but once it became my intention, it did actually feel like I did have a wide range of things that I could offer, and I agreed with some of the people who had approached me.
Yeah.
No, well, at least not now.
Yeah,
Yes, for now, there's only going forward.
Well, what committees did you serve on, and do you think you'll serve on those as you go forth? I mean, will this reorganization somehow affect that? Or?
The reorganization probably will not change that. In the House, we only serve on one committee. In the Senate, they serve on 2 committees, but in the House, we only serve on one committee. So I was assigned to the Corrections and Institutions Committee, and I served on that for 2 years. And I felt on that committee really effective with the corrections part of the policy, because a lot of the work was dealing with justice reform and re-entry of people after the release from prison, and that's all areas where I have work and I have a lot to contribute. The institution side has to do with infrastructure and forming the capital budget for the state. So we heard lots and lots of testimony for things like rebuilding parking garages in Burlington, or infrastructure needs in state college system and things like that. And that part, I didn't feel like I had as much to offer. Like, I'm not a builder. I just don't have a lot to offer in that area. So I may or may not be reassigned to that committee in the next term, but I actually have, I plan to request to be transferred to the Human Services Committee.
Oh, good.
And we'll see. In the end, it's not your decision. You give a list and they decide where they need
that was
you.
going to be my next question.
But I do feel like Human Services would have a broader spectrum of areas where I would have more to contribute instead of just being as much on the learning end. I mean, I did advocate for some good sustainability issues when I was in the institutions committee, looking at like using sustainable energy options instead of fossil fuel options for replating heating systems and things like that. But I feel like Human Services would be closer to my heart.
So we are
Okay.
getting low on time
Yes,
because we
I'm
do have
getting
a
the-
video. We're getting that. Wrap it up.
Oh, whoops.
So if people have questions for you and they want to contact you,
Yep.
what are the best ways to contact you, Michelle?
Yeah, several different options. They are welcome to contact me by phone. My cell phone, my personal phone, is also my campaign phone. The number is 802-289-2495. You can find that on my website. You can also contact me through the website or by email. And all of those are workable.
And the primary date is?
August 9th if you're voting in person, and if you want to vote earlier than that, you can request a ballot from the town clerk or through the Secretary of State's website at any time.
Great.
Well,
So-
thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you.
thanks
This
for
has
coming
been great.
on, and best of luck. We hope that you'll be our representative.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I hope
And-
so
and
as
we'd,
well.
We'd be happy to, moving forward, we've had Leslie on and have you on just to give us updates
Yeah,
and reports,
yeah.
because I think it's important to the community to hear that, to hear what's going on.
And we would be happy to do that. Leslie and I have worked closely together and would be happy to do that.
Awesome.
Okay. And today we're going to close with a video I did from filming I did last week when we were at the National Parks. So Colin's going to roll it. And goodbye, Bellows Falls.
checks.